Shabbat Shalom. We're going to begin. We're excited because we have opened our doors and we are welcoming people back into Ahavas Chesed. We've been online for quite some time, and now we have people joining us in the sanctuary. We're very excited about that, and we're excited that you're joining us from home as well. So we're going to begin with Shalom Aleichem. And if you're following along in the Siddur, it's on page 5, found in transliteration and in the Hebrew and the English and the phonetic. And people might remember that originally Shalom Aleichem was sung in people's homes. And some hundreds of years ago, it migrated from the home table into the synagogue because of the power of the message that angels are coming into our homes. And as I mentioned, since the song migrates from the home into the synagogue, what we're really doing is conveying the message that angels are coming from home to home to home into synagogue. And that has an additional layer of significance because now we have homes and synagogues merging once again. And from our shul out into the cyber world and from home upon home upon home is the message that something as ephemeral and also essential and enduring as peace will always be available. One of the most important ways of bringing that gesture is by singing and by praying. Shalom Aleichem Malachei Asharet Malachei Elyon Malachei Hamlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bo'achem L'Shalom Malachei Shalom Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei Hamlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Baruch Hu L'Shalom Malachei Shalom Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei Hamlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Tzedchem L'Shalom Malachei Shalom Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei Hamlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Something a little bit different tonight. Number one, we're opening our doors back again on the heels of the high holiday season. And number two, as you know, during the high holiday season, our Torahs are dressed in white. And traditionally, about this time of the year, every year, we remove those garbs of white and put the ordinary, beautiful Torah covers on. And I thought, how appropriate for us to do that now that we have reopened our doors. So please rise, all here. And I ask that maybe 8 volunteers step forward for a moment to help us with the Torah scrolls. Just and everyone else, please remain standing. So come on up. So if you've got a Torah, just, Max, take that Torah. Can you take that one out?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Is that too heavy? You got it? And, if I'd been thinking, I would have arranged it, but I haven't. And just find a seat right there, Max. Just find a seat right there. Just stand your right, just sit down. Just sit on down. Okay. And Michael, you just...
do you want me to sit next to you?
No. Actually, Michael, I want you to sit in that far seat right there.
Okay.
And Barry, Barry, let's turn the seat around. This was supposed to be this way.
Huh?
Have a seat, Barry.
Wow.
Okay.
I get to take it home?
And hold on to that, Merrick. I need a couple more helpers. A couple more helpers. Come on up. So this cover needs to go on here. This cover needs to go on here. And this cover needs to go on here. We're just changing right now. I need another helper. This cover, so just slip that cover off and put that cover on. And why not? Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Come on up. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. You can clap. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Bob, Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, somebody else? Torah, we covered, okay. Torah, tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. And if you would just stand and put the Torahs back into the ark. Oops.
It wasn't me.
Here we go, just right there.
You didn't drop the Torah. Yeah, then how many days do I have to fast?
Oh, we don't want to tell you, Barry. Lower shelf is perfect, just right on there.
Yeah. What, no candy?
You know, if I'd been thinking, boy, did I blow that one. I should have taken, you know what, folks? It shows that we all get out of practice. And Barry reminded me, but it's been a year and a half since we've had people in the building handing out candy, and I'm out of practice. And Barry, I owe you all candy. Boy, thank you. Michael, you want to close the curtain and the door? Thank you. Gosh, it's been a year and a half. It's been a year and a half. So we'll have candy. Believe me, we'll have candy next week. Absolutely. So thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. You may be seated. You may be seated. Thank you, Amy. Nurse Amy. Thank you, Amy. About 1 minute. We're going to start at 3 and then go to 6. Okay. So it's good to laugh, folks. There's a Jewish tradition that if and when we need to speak of something that's a little bit sad, we always want to end on a high note. And it was not my intent to bring this up, but it's very much on my mind. And I was reminded of this significant anniversary in modern Jewish history by Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who shared a remark the day before yesterday on the 80th anniversary of Babi Yar. And if you recall, 33,000 Jewish people were killed in a massacre at this ravine. And some years after, their remains were then dug up and incinerated so that there would be no proof. And only as a function of a lot of clamor was the massacre of Babi Yar brought to our attention in our recent years. And when I learned that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is the stepson of a survivor, it moved me deeply. That in the midst of all the other elements of chaos that we have in our world today, he reminded us that we can never forget. And so we're sharing with you tonight a 3-minute segment of a speech which he made public the day before yesterday, for those here in the room and those also joining in via YouTube. And then we'll continue on with the service. And as I've said, there's a Jewish tradition that if and when we start something of a slightly lower tone, we always ascend thereafter, because we always want to put forth the message of growth and hope emerging even from moments of sorrow. And so now with that, a few words from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken.
Massacre. In 1971, my late stepfather, Samuel Pizarro, was asked to join a small delegation of Americans for a series of off-the-record discussions with leaders from the Soviet Union. Members on both sides were drawn from different walks of life, the arts, politics, business, with the aim of fostering a candid dialogue on tough issues. The conference was held in Kyiv, and from the outset, the remarks from much of the Soviet delegation were hostile and rife with anti-Semitism. My stepfather, a Jew who had been born in Poland and Bialystok, had lost almost everyone he loved in the Holocaust. He survived Auschwitz and several other Nazi concentration camps. When members of the Soviet delegation used terms like, and I quote, the Jewish Nazis of New York, end quote, and gave a tour of Kyiv that focused on the suffering and heroism of the city's population during the war without once mentioning the Jews, my stepfather said, the numbers on my arm began to itch. So, he asked to address the Soviet delegation. Speaking off the cuff, he talked about the dangers of anti-Semitism, the hard work societies must do to root out ethnic and racial hatred, the perils of covering up the darkest parts of our history. And he closed with a suggestion. Yesterday, he said, you gave us an opportunity of seeing the memorials to your great patriotic war against the Nazis. Today, it would be worth our while to pay a visit to Babi Yar. The Soviet delegation didn't respond in the moment, but when the session ended, the American delegation decided to visit the site that day. They were brought by bus to the edge of a wood, walked across a clearing where, as my stepfather later wrote, there was, and I quote, nothing to tell of the infamous mass grave under the newly planted birch trees. Then another bus arrived. The Soviet delegation descended and quietly joined the visit. After that visit, my stepfather said, the tone of the dialogue softened considerably. 50 years since that conference, I've been thinking a lot about why he urged the delegations to visit Babi Yar. And I believe it was because he knew that one of the most powerful ways to conquer hatred is to show people where it leads, its human consequences. He made those delegates see that he could just as easily have been one of the people buried in that ravine, or one of the 6 million. He knew that when we fail to remember, or when we intentionally erase parts of our history, we further dehumanize the victims. And we deprive ourselves and future generations of the lessons we must learn and act on. And he knew the power of changing the mind of even a single member of that Soviet delegation. Because the only thing that ever stands between us and atrocities is our fellow human beings. For just as people have the capacity to be perpetrators, so can they be righteous. So on this anniversary, we honor the memory of all those lost at Babi Yar. We recommit ourselves to ensuring that their full history is told, and we pledge to act every day so that history is not repeated. Thank you for listening.
shalom aleinu. Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, behakol Yisrael, veimeru
And now we turn to page number 11, L'chuna Ranana on the English side. The first three stanzas. Let us go and sing to Adonai. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. Filled with thanks, let us greet God, raising our voice in song. Great is Adonai, a greater sovereign than all other deities. God's hands form the earth's deep. Mountain crests too are God's work. The sea is God's, for God made it. Dry land was fashioned by God's hands. Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai, who formed us. And stop there. And you ask why, and the answer is to remind you and me that we must see ourselves as formed by God's own hands, just as God formed the valleys and the meadows and the oceans and the rivers. We are the touch of God here in tangible form. And that's how we begin, moving away from that earlier tone and starting to ascend And in just a few minutes, we'll be turning to the L'Chadodi. But now another piece by Craig Taubman. This is Sha'alu, which means call out for peace for Jerusalem. Sha'alu, Shalom Yerushalayim, a new piece by Craig Taubman.
Shahalu, Shalom Yerushalayim, Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. Shalom Yerushalayim, Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah.
Sha'alu, call out, folks. You have to call out, sing and call out, and urge and implore for peace. L'Chadodi on page 23 and page 25.
לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לה, לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת ולתהילה. לה 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 לה, לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לה 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 לה, לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייכם. לה 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 לה, לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, Shabbat nekavela. Boi v'shalom Ateret bala Gam b'simcha Uvetzola Toch emunei Am segula Boi chala לקראת קלה ומפני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה ומפני שבת נקבלה לה 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 לך דודי לקראת קלה ומפני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה ומפני שבת נקבלה לה 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 לך דודי לקראת קלה ומפני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה ומפני שבת נקבלה לה 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 לך דודי לקראת קלה ומפני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה ומפני שבת נקבלה לה לה
As we remain standing, look at page 27, just the first stanza. This is the psalm for Shabbat itself. And for thousands of years, we recited this psalm on this occasion at the beginning of Friday evening and also on Shabbos morning services. The first stanza, it's good to thank you, Adonai. It's good to sing to your name, Most High, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. It's good to thank, and we sing with gratitude. That's what we just did with L'Chadodi. And the Psalm for Shabbat is offering an editorial comment. That's good for us to sing together as a group. And we're back in the room together again. We're singing as a group. And look at the conclusion on page 28, which is the fulfillment of that idea of reminding us that it's good for us to come together to sing as a group. The last two stanzas, another editorial comment speaking to all of us in the building and beyond. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, in whom there is no flaw. And an outgrowth of coming together and singing as a group is a testimony that we, in the fullness of our lives, have much to contribute to our world. So the first step to a guaranteed longevity, if there is a guarantee, is to sing together. Guess what, folks? We just did that. The Baruch Hu, page 39b. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMavorach. Baruch Adonai HaMavorach Le'olam Va'ed. And we were seated, and I have to tell you that it's been months and months and months since I've heard a response. Baruch Adonai HaMavorach Le'olam Va'ed, 5 little words. But to hear those 5 little words from a minion in the building is super exciting. Just to hear that little echo, that little response, which means that we're here again and we're responding and listening to one another. That's Baruch, offering blessings and praise. On the English side, Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space. You completed your work of creation on the 7th day. calling this day from one evening to the next the Holy Shabbat, and gave this day of rest and all its holiness to your people Israel, creator of day and night, light before darkness and darkness from light, making day pass and bringing on the evening, distinguishing day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo chalen olam voed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. On page 40, the left marginal note, to love the world. When we act with love, Franz Rosenzweig remarks, the neighbor represents all the world and thus distorts the eye's view. Prayer, however, pleads for enlightenment and thereby, without overlooking the neighbor, sees beyond the neighbor, sees the whole world, including the neighbor. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema on page number 41. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. And a moment of silence on page number 42. Adonai Elohechem emet. On page 44, the fourth line down, Mi chamocha. Mi chamocha poelim Adonai, Mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh noratilot osef eleh Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokeh hayam lifnei Moshe, zeli anu v'yamro, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed, v'ne'emar, ki fadar Adonai et Yaakov, ugalo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. And in a moment, on page 45 of the Hashkivenu, you know by now that I'm very attached to this prayer. Hashkivenu is a command. We're commanding God to help all of us, as each one of us individually prepares for nightfall, to tuck us in to bed at night with a sense of tranquility and restored calm in spite of what we may be encountering during our day. That's the origination of the Hashkivenu, perhaps 1800 years ago or longer. And in light of what's been going on lately these past months and years, we desperately need the Hashkivenu. To have people back in the building again, along with those online, to lend their voices to this shared, gentle demand of God is very moving. Because it's not just me, it's all of us. Hashkivenu, the new at the end means all of us are calling out simultaneously for all of us here and beyond this space. The Hashkivenu at the top of page 45. Hashkivenu Adonai our God, to sleep peacefully. Awaken us to life, O Sovereign. Spread over us your canopy of peace. Restore us with your good counsel, and save us for the sake of your name. Shield us. Remove from us enemies, pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. For you, God, watch over and deliver us. And you, God, are sovereign, merciful, and compassionate. Ensure our going and coming for life and peace now and forever. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah. The canopy of peace over us, over all the people Israel, and over Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. V'shamru, the top of page 46. V'shamro v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. V'shamro v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti leolam, oti leolam, oti leolam. V'shamro v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz v'shamro v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Uvayom Hashvi, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Veshamra Bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Yitkara Shemei Rabbah, B'chayechan V'yomechan Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Uv'izman Karev V'imero, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, La'olam Li'olmei Olmaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yinaseh, V'yadar, V'yitale, V'yithalal, Shemei D'Kedusha, B'rechu, Leila M'karbachata V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Da'amiran Me'alma, V'imero, Amen. And now we rise for the Silent Lamida, traditionally pages 47 through 52. A few moments of silence, and allow your feet to propel you up to a standing posture. And if not necessarily following the traditional text, take hold of what it means for your feet to spontaneously propel you standing up. Your body is involved in setting a tone for your mind. A few moments of silent, private reflection. We all know the name of this wonderful place, Ahavas Chesed. Ahavas Chesed is a what? What's the English word for this place? That's the name I messed up, but what do we call this building? We call it a shul. And of course, Audrey has identified every English word. People know how to call the word shul is Yiddish, right? Okay, in English, what do we call this place? A synagogue. And what's the Hebrew word? Beit HaKnesset. So Beit HaKnesset is the Hebrew and Greek synagogue, and they both mean the same thing, a house of gathering or house of assembly. And shul comes from the word school, which means to teach. And so whether you're looking at this place from the Yiddish or European Jewish lens, that this is a place of instruction, or whether you're looking at it from the Hebrew and Greek terminology, that's a place of gathering, you know what's essential is that people coming into this place for shared learning and for gathering for all types of hallowed purposes. And this is on my mind because of a building project that takes place in this week's Torah reading, and perhaps you remember it from a long time ago when as children you learned about the Tower of Babel. In English, mentioned the Tower of Babel. And everybody is described as speaking the entire same language. Everybody in the world is speaking the same language. And they all come together to build a building. And they're building this great, great tower, and God is described as being distressed over this cohesive, shared operation, this unifying project. And God scatters the people across the different parts of the world speaking different languages. And I wonder, what's so bad about people building a giant tower when they're all coming together? Why would God view a shared collective project so negatively as to interrupt the building project and to scatter? And if you look carefully at the introduction to this very short scene of just a few verses, you see perhaps the motivation as being off. Because the people come forward and say, let us build a tower so that we can make a great name for ourselves. So what's the purpose of the building project? Not to bring an opportunity for people to gather to learn or to assemble or to study or to pray, or to collect food for the hungry, or to provide shelter for those in need. But it's a function of ego. Let's just make something bigger than has ever been made before, and as a result of that, we will publicize our own name. So their view of improvement of themselves is a function of something that's concrete and tangible. I'm putting my name on something. And I think that's what causes distress. So you and I are coming back into our shared space, a space that was built in a variety of ways over a variety of time periods. The very first one in 1912, a small house, and then the second one, a building on Conti and Warren, and then the third, a location on Dolphin Street, and the fourth here on 705. And those buildings weren't built just because a group of people wanted to say, look at what I've built to link my sense of ego to an edifice. Those buildings were built to be a Beit Knesset, a house of gathering, a shul, a place of instruction, a place of reminding us of what you and I can contribute to the community in that time period and ever on into the future. And now we're reestablishing ourselves. We are a very different Halavai from that generation of Bavel, which only had its ego at stake. And you and I are moving forward. May we be blessed as we continue to grow for the right reasons. And we're so excited. And we're going to have minyanim, and we're going to share Torah. And at some point, When it's right, we'll share meals again, and we'll reestablish ourselves. We rise for the Aleinu. We're going to do Kiddush a little bit later because we want to do Kiddush and Hamotzi in a safe way, and so we'll be doing Kiddush and Hamotzi later on, bless you, at the end of the service, which is why we have the table set up in the back. For now, we rise for the Aleinu. The Aleinu is on page number 56, page 56, Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asan k'goyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anach אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים עמם ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים הו אלוהינו אין עוד אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום ושבת אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. Shemon, Echad. And the moment, the Mortis Kaddish on page number 58. And on this Shabbat, we remember with great love Rebecca Grotsky-Slutsky, Bernard Dittman, Harry Hirsch, Chester Weber, Joe Gerwich, Dave Miller, H.Z. Lubell, Milton Maisel, Nathan Weinstein, Grace Levinson, Bella Binder, David Weinberg, Jack Eisenberg, Beverly Zinn, Mrs. Nathan Bela Sobel, Dorothy Fleischer, remembering Jerry Berger, Yetta Lee, Sally Berger, Nancy Howell. Are there any other names to mention tonight? Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, Amen. Be'olma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chaye echon uv'yom echon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imiru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach lo'olam l'olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh V'yithadar, v'yitale, v'yitalal, shemei, dekudasha, b'richu, la'ela, min kol, birchata, v'shirata, tushbechata, v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'olma, v'imru, amen. Yehi shalama rabo min shamaya v'chayim oleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom oleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. You've heard this before, but we need to say it again. It's that Yehei Shlama line and the Oseh Shalom line. And both of those last two lines, the Yehei Shalom is Aramaic, Oseh Shalom is Hebrew, have the phrase, I'll call Yisrael for everyone. And so those people who are in this room and joining in online are praying for not only the memory of their loved ones, but everybody else in the world. And synagogues all over the world are remembering not only their own loved ones, but offering a prayer for everyone else in the world. And just bear that in mind, picturing synagogues throughout the country, the world, and in a certain way, we're all listening to each other and responding in prayer. A couple of quick reminders. Tomorrow, of course, services, 10 to 11:15. And tomorrow night, Havdalah on Zoom is now at 7. People are enjoying it, so join on in. If you have any questions, ask me about that. Monday, Tanakh study is at noon on Zoom. Tuesday, we have adult Hebrew and also the spirit topic. And then Thursday is our story time for our toddlers. And we have Guitar Shabbat next week with Yehuda on the Bima. And I think we'll stop for right now. And now we'll turn to page 211 for Adon Olam, and then the Kiddush. Page 211, Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra li'ed nasa v'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu aya v'hu V'hu yeh b'tifara, v'hu yeh b'tifara, v'hu echad v'yein sheni laham shilo lahachbira, b'lei reshit, b'lei tachlit, v'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra, v'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra, v'hu elev echad go aliv et sor chavli b'yet sarah be'onese omanosli menad kosi b'yom mekra menad kosi b'yom mekra b'yado avkid ruchi be'et ishan v'yaira v'imruchi gaviyati Adonai li v'lo ira, Adonai le v'lo ira. And now we'll turn to Kiddush, and perhaps at home you have a glass of wine and a piece of bread to join us in Kiddush, as we here in the shul will be making Kiddush. The Kiddush is on page number 55, and of course wine or juice, whatever your preference might be. Wine or juice, whatever your preference might be. And we've got wine and grape juice here, so as people in the shul are making their way back to the table to help themselves to wine or grape juice, we're making Kiddush, and we have bread out here as well. And perhaps at some point, those at home will also feel comfortable joining in. We are socially distant. We're wearing our masks. We're vaccinated. But at that moment that we drink the wine, of course, we drop our mask for just a moment. But we are masked and vaccinated and socially distant during the large majority of our time here. So now we're on page number 55. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'yava uvratzon inchilanu zikaro l'maseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי באנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ושבת קודשך באהבה ורצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'tov. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat Shalom, thanks for joining us, and may you realize that you are a blessing to us and to the world. Good Shabbos for now.